everyone, my name is Shauna and Keisha and welcome back to another video. So today is going to be my last video of 2025, and last year I sort of ended the year with a wrap up of my favorite and least favorite cons of the year. This year I'm going to be doing it a little bit differently. I'm going to be doing my 5 favorite cons of the year, and I'm also going to be talking about 3 things that I think cons should work on in 2026 to start improving the con experience for attendees. Now, out of my favorite cons, I'm talking about them based off of enjoyment level. Objectively, these cons do have some things that they need to work on improving on. However, these are the cons that I had the most fun at in 2025. So I'm going to be starting at the bottom and then going all the way up to the top. So we're going to start with number 5. With number 5, I'm doing Emerald City Comic Con. Emerald City is a great con for me because there is so much to do. There's such a wide variety. You can find your own specific little niches in there. There's always stuff to do. I do sometimes get a little overwhelmed because there is so much to do at Emerald City Comic Con. However, it is one of my favorites and it has the best guest lineup out of any cons in Oregon and Washington, in my opinion. They get some really big names, but they also get smaller voice actors, so I think they have a good variety. They also get authors. They sometimes will have like panels that will be focused on a movie, and you'll get like actors popping in to like promo their movie that you weren't expecting, that aren't like an official guest and stuff, you know? So I feel like there's a lot to Emerald City and there's a lot of good things about it. Is it free from problems? No, it definitely needs to work on things like lines, and I feel like ADA accommodations could use a little bit of improvement. However, I really enjoyed Emerald City Comic Con this year, and it is one that I will try and go to every single year if I can. Number 4 for me is basically Emerald City but smaller, and that is Rose City Comic Con. Rose City Comic Con feels so much more manageable to me because it's so much smaller. It is basically like the same vibes of Emerald City, just in a much more compact place. There is a lot less to do, however there is always something to do at Rose City. I've never gotten bored of it. I ran my first panel and meetup at Rose City this year. I'm not great at running meetups, not gonna lie. I prefer running panels. The panel went really well and it was a lot of fun, and I am considering running another panel at Rose City in 2026. The third one is one that I went to in 2024 for the first time, and I wasn't the biggest fan, but I decided to give it a second chance because my friends were going, and I ended up going to Dyerbrook, and I think Dyerbrook is slowly but surely improving. It feels like there's a strong sense of community there now, and there is a lot of people like making content for it and creating this space that is fun for everyone, and I really like the vibe. It is a dark fantasy convention, so it is 18 plus, so there is that, so minors can go there. However, there is a lot of fun things to do there, and there's a lot of fun and unique panels, and I mainly spent my time just hanging out with my friends, but I had so much fun there. It's definitely a con that I will try and go back to in the future. I see it as a con that will just keep improving year to year. Number 2 for me is PAX West. This was my first year at PAX West, and it is a different vibe from other cons. I want to make that abundantly clear. You're not going to find like a huge artist alley or anything. It's mainly just like you try games, and the games can be video games that you're testing out before they are released or right after they are released, or it's going to be like tabletop games. I feel like there's a wide variety of games, but it is definitely a very like gaming niche. If you're not into gaming, it's not going to be the con for you unless you're going to hang out with friends. And I was hanging out with friends and I met some amazing people at PAX West, which is why I enjoyed the con so much. There is also a lot of fun after parties at PAX West. I did one that was really fun, and I don't know, I just really enjoyed it. It's definitely a different vibe. Like, it's not one where I'm gonna go with like $300 I'm gonna spend in artist alley, because there isn't really much of an artist alley. However, I just found it to be fun to hang out with friends there, and I think if you are into trying new video games, then it's definitely one to go, to just like go check out all the different video games and try them all out. I didn't try any games this time around, but I'm hoping to try some when I go next year. If I go next year, I probably will go next year. And number 1 on this list for me is KomoriCon. I think KomoriCon is one that is a lot smaller, and it's not perfect. Like, for some reason, there's always drama at KomoriCon. Like, it seems like that's a thing. I've lobby content once, I've gone to it twice, there's always been like intense drama. However, drama aside, I had a lot of fun at KomoriCon this year. It was just like a great sense of community. I had so many friends that I was hanging out with and having fun with. I found some really cool stuff in Artist Alley. So it is a good con. Is it free from problems? No. And I think it's one that I know that leadership is changing around, so the flaws that the con have, I see them as ones that can be fixed with the leadership changes that are currently happening. I'm mutuals with some people on Instagram who work in the leadership position, so I've seen a little bit of behind the scenes stuff, and I see that they are working really hard to fix the problems that they have. So it's one that I feel confident will improve more and more with each coming year, so I'm going to keep going to it, and I mean, it's local to me. I live in Portland. So yeah, it's one that I definitely enjoy. I would say that if you're traveling to Portland for a convention from out of state, I feel like it depends on what you want. I don't recommend traveling for Fan Expo, for example, unless you're into like tons of guest stuff, but Fan Expo, if there's snow, you run into problems because Portland doesn't really have many plows. If you are into guest stuff too, Rose City gets a lot of good guests, and that's like general Comic-Con vibes, but if you're into anime, KomoriCon is the one to go to. Okay, now time for the 3 things that I want cons to start working on and improving in the coming year. Who knows if this will actually happen, but we'll see how it goes. Registration needs some changes at a lot of cons that I went to. They need to work on registration lines. For example, SakuraCon this year, I waited several hours in line on day 0 in the ADA line because I am disabled. And it was hot in there and I was struggling, and it was because I think a lot of the machines are down. I also think it was poorly managed. I know also people weren't showing up for their shifts. Again, I'm mutuals with people who work the con. And I think also registration, I don't think any cons should have people's legal first and last name on badges. That might be an unpopular opinion. I don't like that. It is unsafe. There has been several instances of stalking that I have dealt with in the cosplay community, whether it be personally or happening to my friends, and I think it's unsafe to have legal first and last names on badges. I also think, like, even if their stalking isn't an issue, people shouldn't be required to walk around with their full legal name on display. And also, if you're trans and you haven't legally changed your name, like, there's a problem with that. There's also a problem with, like, if you register and then you legally change your name and then you go to pick up your badge. And I'm looking at you, SakuraCon. Like, that is a huge problem with that con. However, I know SakuraCon isn't the only con that does this, and I think just across the board, no legal names on badges, let's work on registration lines. And I think that if we get that part of it a little more under control, I think cons will be a lot more enjoyable. And also, if people aren't waiting all day in line to get their badges, they can actually go and enjoy the con and support the artists and panels and stuff. Because I know a lot of people who went to pick up their badges on the Friday of SakuraCon and were not able to enjoy the con at all the day, or explore anything, which is just such a waste. I think cons also generally need to work on building a sense of community and just general things for people to do there. I went to several cons this year, for example, Anime Wonder, Anime Washington, where it felt like there wasn't much to do. Like, it felt like the main thing was that they were prioritizing getting these voice actors, and because they were prioritizing getting these voice actors, it ended up being cons where it was like, it felt like it was just for the voice actors. There wasn't much else to do, and there was no sense of community. Anime Wonder in particular was like super tiny, and it was their first year in Washington, I think. So hopefully if they come back, they'll be able to do it better. But sense of community for me has been what's been most important for me about cons. I love meeting voice actors, I love buying art, but artists are part of that sense of community, you know? So for example, like SakuraCon, like, there's a sense of community there, and it is in large part because of the artists they have and how we're all going and supporting the artists. And so I think cons that are just starting out, for example, Anime Washington and Anime Wonder, they should work on building that sense of community. And some of that will be like recruiting local cosplayers to come in and run panels and stuff. And then the third thing is, I think cons need to get better at communication with con attendees. This includes some of the ones that I have that were my favorite ones of this year. I have like run panels and meetups this year, and I've discovered that like communication is very lacking. And going back to the sense of community, the people who are running panels and meetups and stuff are helping build that sense of community. So you have to have clear communication with them. You also have to have clear communication with attendees. Like, there was a con earlier this year that was canceled last minute and things weren't communicated with fans and stuff, and I'm like, we need the communication there. And I don't think it's hard to improve communication. I think communication too also applies to cons like WasabiCon and stuff, where it's like, you also not only need to make sure you're communicating with fans more, but you also need to make sure like you are hiring people who can handle criticism and know how to run social media pages. This is also coming from someone who used to run a social media page for a local convention. It's sort of fallen apart in recent years, so I don't really run the page anymore, even though I'm like still connected with that community. But like, there are people who should be running those accounts and there are people who shouldn't, and sometimes it's hard to like be like, this is my baby, this is my con, and you get criticism, and sometimes you're like, oh my god, I need to like respond and I need to like slap back at people, and it's like, no, you have to take a step back. Like, people who have training in PR and stuff, for example, are the people who should be running the social media pages. So yeah, I think those are my rambling thoughts. I was considering doing my least favorite conventions again this year, but I was like, I feel like there's general themes that I'm seeing at multiple cons that are more important to talk about. Like, maybe we can work on improving those as opposed to talking about my least favorite ones of the year. I don't think that there's any that I went to this year that I would be like 100% unwilling to go to ever again. I think there's some that I definitely would only do like one day next year or something, like for example Anime Wonder. However, there wasn't any cons this year that I'm like, oh my god, I need to boycott. Like last year I went to WasabiCon and then I was like, okay, I gotta like boycott that, you know? So there wasn't as many that were like super duper bad this year. Most of them were pretty good, some of them were average, but I think that I went to a good variety of cons this year. I think the only one that I normally go to that I missed out on this year was Washington State Summer Con, just because I was in California at the time. That's one that I'm hoping to hit up in 2026, but yeah, that was just sort of like a recap of like my favorite cons, things to improve, just cons in general in 2025. I'm going to a lot of cons in 2026, so I'm super excited, but my list is so long. Let's go over some of these really quick while I have you here. So the cons that I'm for sure doing next year is MagFest, which is on the East Coast. It'll be my first time doing an East Coast con in winter, so I'm a little nervous about that, but I'm also really excited. Then I'll be doing Fan Expo Portland, most likely Anime Washington if I can figure out my like lodging situation, Emerald City Comic Con, Sakura Con, PAX East, because I have a friend out there that I'll be going to PAX East with. Lauren Lester, I've been getting more into like bookish and like fantasy events, so Lauren Lester is one that I will be doing. I believe there's one called Realms Unknown that I'm planning on doing. I'm doing Rose City Comic Con, Kimura Con, hopefully can squeeze in CoovCon depending on when CoovCon is, and EnchantyCon I'm most likely doing next year, which I'm super pumped about because LeakyCon rebranded to EnchantyCon and I haven't been able to go since it rebranded, but I'm really excited to see the changes that have been made to the con since it's rebranded. And hopefully Washington State Summer Con, but no clue about that one yet. Some other ones that I'm considering are Chibi Chibi Con, Toon Fusion in Eugene, Western Washington University Queer Con, most likely doing PAX West, although there's a chance that I won't do it. I'm pulling out my list really quickly to see if there's any I'm missing. So I considered BattleCon. I doubt I'm doing BattleCon just because I don't know about lodging, but that was one that I've considered. And Portland Retro Gaming Expo I'm hoping to do because my nephew really enjoyed it this year. That was another one that was like good. It should have been in my top 5 now that I think about it, but I don't know which one I would have taken off of my top 5, but that was one that I went to with my nephew that he really enjoyed, so I feel like that might be an annual thing that I start taking my nephew to. I have an interest in the Washington State Horror Con, and I have a friend that may be going with me to that. I'm also interested in Spirit of Halloween Town and potentially Geek Girl Con, but I feel like something always comes up that interferes with me going to Geek Girl Con. So those are sort of the cons that I'm like looking at for next year. I think the only one I officially have badges for right now is MagFest, but the other ones I will for sure be getting badges soon. I've budgeted out to make sure I can afford it and everything. So yeah, that was a lot of me just yapping, so I feel like I should end the video here. I hope all of you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to me if you haven't already. I upload at least one video a week, and that video normally goes up on Saturdays, so next Saturday there will be a new video. My uploads may slow down a little bit in January just because I'm going to be super busy. I think I have something nearly every single weekend in January, but I'm hoping that I can stick to my schedule of posting once every Saturday. If you want to see any of my cosplays that I wear to cons or anything, they are over on my YouTube shorts. I also have pictures up over on my Instagram. Also, all of my other social media and wish lists and everything fun like that will be linked down in the description below if anyone is curious about any of that. I hope all of you had a great 2025. If you went to any conventions in 2025, you should let me know down in the comment section below which one was your favorite, because I'm curious what cons were the best in the world this year, and I'm curious what ones maybe I should start considering going to in future years. I hope all of you have a great start to your new year, and I'll see all of you in my next video. Until next time, everyone, goodbye.